looking to add a core team, which is a part of Sophia, to strengthen our collaboration with that organization. So that's a lot of committees. So to avoid some duplication while also maximizing the energy of our small congregation, we're working to restructure all of that. This is a bit of a work in progress, but on the 21st, that's 2 Sundays from now, following church, we will have a meeting to talk about how we might get all of this done. There's a lot of energy moving around this right now. So check it out, and if you can join in on the 21st, that would be great. The second thing is, we have, I think as many of you know, been making some collections and supporting Melissa Temple, the teacher who has now been suspended from the Waukesha School District because of the Rainbow Land controversy. We offered up the noisy offering that we collected on Easter, and since then we've received additional donations and then proceeds from the bake sale as well. And so all told, we have collected about $900 from Melissa. Yep. And she has used that money to buy herself a new laptop because the laptop she was using was, of course, collected by the school district when she was suspended. So Melissa gives us a nice thank you note with a rainbow on it, saying to all the beautiful people at the UU Waukesha, there are no words to express my gratitude for all you have done to show your support for me. The Rainbow Land Choir and the collection that you took for me is such a great example of how the community can come together to express support and share their love with the world. I wish all of you the best as we continue to fight to be heard and make positive changes. It's from Melissa. Great. So this month's theme is creativity. And the conversation in Waukesha lately has been all about rainbows. Our writers group is offering 2 ways to be more intentionally creative this month. So the first thing is the UUU Rainbow Poem. Each week, you will receive a few questions posted on the Tuesday email for you to answer as you are comfortable. Short answers, even 1 word, are fine. We already have several great answers coming in. What do you love that is red or orange? My son's hair, the sun, a Christmas ornament, a mariachi dancing screen. Worship song so far seems to be Blue Boat Home. Easy questions. Copy of the questions can be found on the website under Member Access in the same place that you can find the Soul Matters packets for the month. There's also a button on in your email, and there are printed copies, I believe, right there on the shelf by the hymnals. So simply, if you want to do the hard copy thing, simply fold and place your answers into the basket, which is right over there. At the end of the month, all of these answers will be collected, and our writers will make a poem. Your poem. Second thing is, there are some scratch cards in that basket too, similar, well, they're exactly the same as the ones that you can see hanging right there. Take a few cards home throughout the month. If you scratch away the black part, you will find a rainbow underneath. So you can make a rainbow design of however it is that you want to do. Bring the card back, and then we'll hang them on the windows throughout the month, so that our sanctuary comes alive with rainbows. One little bit of caution. Apparently someone has faked my phone number again and is texting people with bogus requests. Please be careful of that. We have had this kind of activity before with email. This is the first, I think, that it's occurred in texting. Be very careful with how you respond to texts. It's usually pretty apparent whenever I call, and I will never ask you for immediate money or transfers or to buy a bridge. Yeah. So today's sermon is a request from last year's auction. You know, I offer up sermon topics. This one was won by Ann Armstrong. Took a long time to get here. I've invited Rusty here for 2 reasons to help me out. Because of his connection to Anne, How many years? 54 years. And as a way of getting your board members up in front of you a little bit more. Rusty's a board member, in case you did not know. I think that's it for announcements. Anybody? Golly. Please center yourselves for worship. I'm going to invite Molly, come forward now and help us light our chalice. May this flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth. Here together we scatter and nurture seeds of spirit, service, and community. Let's sing together hymn number 347 in your gray hymnals or here on the wall, Gather the Spirit. Please rise in body or spirit. Changes to our order of service to accommodate our children, to make them more a part of this community. So we've moved joys and sorrows now to this part of the service. And if you have a joy or a sorrow now to share, I would invite you to come forward, speak your name into the microphone, tell us what's on your mind, take a stone from the bowl, hold it in your hand while you speak, and when you are finished, place it in the bowl with the water to let the ripples carry your concern out to the wider community. And as always, this portion of the service is neither streamed nor recorded for your confidentiality. So a few weeks ago, we started this series, and I held it up for a while for Easter because it just didn't seem quite appropriate for that. But we started with parts and then more parts, and today we have even more parts. Sometimes I wish my stupid ears weren't always wide open. They hear such strange and crazy talk, I'm scared to go outside. I jotted down a list of all the scary things I've heard. Believe me, all these are real. I wrote them word for word. To leave my bedroom unprepared, I'd have to be a fool because, excuse me now, there's work to do before I go to school. Lost a slide. I lost my head. I keep changing my mind. I want all eyes on me. My ears are burning. My nose is running. I'm tongue-tied. Don't give me any of your lip. I have a frog in my throat. I sang my heart out. My stomach is growling. Please lend me a hand. It cost an arm and a leg. I put my foot in my mouth. I'd better toe the line. It made my skin crawl. I got all bent out of shape. I went to pieces. There are so many crazy things I have to keep in mind. I sure don't want to accidentally leave my parts behind. Mom says, "Dear, it's time for school. Let's go or you'll be late." Then Dad says, "Just remember, son, keep your head on straight." That's my silly story for today. Children can now go off to class with Lily. Let's sing them out. Join me in a few moments of quiet reflection, meditation, prayer. As with our own joys and sorrows, it's always a mixed bag. Such a beautiful day, and as was pointed out earlier, we are reeling from yet another incident of gun violence, mass shootings. I'm also thinking of all of the political strife that continues, the uncertainty of our laws and our future. Just this last week, arguments were heard before the Supreme Court in Wisconsin on Wisconsin's antiquated abortion law. So much going on. and in conversation for today's service recalls a poem by Rudyard Kipling that has served as a touchstone for them. It is If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all people count with you but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be someone. Let's sing together. You may remain seated. Spirit of life.
Good morning. Is this loud enough? Okay. I'm rusty. David has gotten me up here. He said I had to limit my time to 1,500 words. But I'm going to give you some relief from that, okay? Early in my life, I remember attending more conservative and even evangelical churches. This was not a satisfying journey. I've actually been to tent revivals and so on, and I'll tell you, like they say, people get sweating and they are loud, and it's quite the event if you've never been to one. Religion was all about reading and quoting the Bible with much damnation, fear, little interpretation. In seeking faith and love, far from the rigid dogma, I was curious about UU. Church could become a home. We first belonged to UU Brookfield, We were won over by one of two ministers called David Ferguson, and we have our David here. We felt more comfortable with reason, community, and independent with UU. We have met many other refugees and pilgrims who have been much more tolerant and willing to do good works. The board and congregation is invested in worth and dignity for everyone. And as a board member, my challenge is to try to serve the congregation with collaboration and leadership. We also came to UU because our sons at that time were young, and we wanted them to be open and positive about religion. We wanted to provide them with a guardrail for their future lives. We also love the music selections and inspiration each week. Thanks, Alex and Aaron. And finally, our church may be small, but our various committees have vision beyond our numbers. Who would have thought, at least I would have thought, years ago that I'd take part in a protest about Rainbow Land? Is that even possible? Well, it's certainly possible in this church. So, if you are engaged, if you can dream, if you can think, you might be a UU. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. An offering in this congregation. It's part of what it takes to sustain this church, this building, this ministry, this sense of community that we find here. Ushers will come forward now. Please give generously.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sup sorrow with a bore. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting by the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a sigh that is wafted across a troubled wave. 'Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around a lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more.
Thank you, Alex. So that song also was a request from Anne here. It's a favorite, I think. And we didn't really plan it this way, but sometimes, this is a little geeky, but I like to work with a motif as well as a theme. And today's service title was Up a Creed Without a Paddle. And it was just a stupid pun. It was nothing more than that. And Alex picked up on it. And so we have this river theme going, all motif going throughout the whole service. So once again, this is a sermon topic chosen at last year's auction. We had a chance to finally sit down and talk through this a few weeks ago. As Rusty had just told us, Ann and Rusty have been UUs since 1979, and their two boys enjoyed time growing up in the UU church, and they participated in cons at that time. I don't know if you all are familiar, but great gatherings of UU youth, and they experienced the community that you find in a congregation, and also an experience of the other, and helped build them, I think, as people. We talked about all kinds of questions about what UUs believe, why everyone doesn't believe this, or at least a whole lot more people don't believe this. Amen. And I think that they have a lot in common with other folks who have made their way here. We talked theodicy, like what's the deal with evil, especially if we think of God as pure love. Why do bad things happen to good people? Reminds me of a Farley Mowat quote, "We're under some gross misconception that we're a good species going somewhere important, and at the last minute we'll correct our errors and God will smile on us." It's delusion. We talked ethics. Don't be a jerk. That's the sum of the law. Well, almost. We talked faith and how we have come to place trust, not so much in providence, but in other people. We talked dogma. What's it mean to have a creed? Why are we non-creedal? So that's what we're going to focus on today. Creeds, and how creeds got us to be Unitarian Universalists. So the really big one, the Nicene Creed. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father, very God from very God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father, that whole thing. You might know this. It would take about 3 minutes to say all of it, so I'm not going to do that. I don't have that much time. Consubstantial, however, that word, of the same substance. Remember that. The Nicene Creed comes from the Council of Nicaea, convened in the year 325. It was called by Constantine, the Roman emperor, who had decriminalized Christianity about 10 years before that, and then made it the official religion of the realm, completely as a political move. Think of the influence of the religious right today. Constantine wanted control. He saw co-opting Christianity as a way of getting it. But then he found that even the Christians didn't get along. In particular, an elder of the church in Alexandria named Arius had been teaching that at some point God had created Christ. At some point, God created Christ. Riots broke out over this. So Constantine brought the bishops together in the city of Nicaea, which is a region in Asia Minor, to resolve the issue. In comes Athanasius, sort of the Billy Graham of his day, with a hint of Rush Limbaugh. He's snarky, I'm going to say mean-spirited. I've read Athanasius, diametrically opposed to Arius. Upshot is, Athanasius wins. The council established the metaphysical idea of the Trinity, the consubstantiation of the Father with the Son, and by the way, the Holy Spirit. Athanasius says all of this is one thing within three persons. Jesus wasn't just a human, but also God. Not created by God, but co-eternal. There never was a time when he was not. The Council of Nicaea is where the idea of the Trinity comes from, and I think a whole lot of more confusion. Along the way, Athanasius, like the good Fox News guest that he is, brands Arianism as an epithet, really worse, as a heresy. Think of how the term liberal became pejorative in the 1980s. That's what Arianism came to mean only for about the next 17 centuries. Then comes the Protestant Reformation and the invention of the printing press, which is not insignificant, and the Bible becomes available in the vernacular. You don't need priests, you can read it for yourself. Enter Michael Servetus, a Spaniard, a physician, first to identify the pulmonary system. And he's also kind of a smart mouth, cocky, and a dilettante. In those days, science and religion and everything all of a piece. So he was a theologian as well. He reads his Bible, finds no mention of the Trinity. Nowhere in the Bible. The Bible does not address the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in close proximity like that. Surprise! The priests, way back to Athanasius, made it all up. Servetus publishes a book on the errors of the Trinity, which really ticks off the orthodoxy, especially John Calvin, a generation after Martin Luther, head of the church state in Geneva. There's a long saga between Calvin and Servetus, but in the end, Servetus is burned at the stake by John Calvin in 1553. There is a good book in our library, Out of the Flames, and it describes in detail how Calvin had specifically made the fire with green wood so that it would sputter and smoke and prolong the agony that Servetus underwent. There was backlash after that time. People thought that was really too much. Yeah. So some positive from the end of all that, I suppose. Calvin, by the way, is the author of the acronym TULIP. I don't know if any of you know this. It's not exactly a creed, but it's similar. So TULIP, T stands for total depravity. You're schmutz. Even worse, you are fundamentally flawed. You, unconditional election. If you are one of the chosen ones, you are chosen. It's not your decision, it's God's. There are no requirements if you are the one who is picked. God knows, and God's mysterious. So there. This is exactly what covers Donald Trump in the eyes of evangelicals. No matter how many times he has raped someone, God has chosen him, they say, with all his faults. Just like me and all of my faults. So I get to feel good about that. L, TULIP, L, limited atonement. The elect, those who are chosen, are just a few. There are only a few of us, and you don't really know, except wink and a nod. Yeah, we know. Irresistible grace, similar to election. If you are chosen, you are chosen. It's not your choice, not your decision. But in the first case, election has no requirements. In the second case, there's no way you can say no. P, perseverance of the saints. And this one's not maybe so obvious. Perseverance in this sense means everyone who has been regenerated in God is among those who have been chosen for eternal life. This is where born again comes from. It's that regeneration part. In being born again, you are sanctified. Anyway, it's Trinitarianism in contrast to Calvin's Trinitarianism. Oh, there's John Calvin, by the way. That gets him in trouble. If only he would do as modern Unitarians do and just eliminate 2 words from the creed, he'd be okay. And those 2 words are, I believe. And he doesn't, so he dies. But liberal religion persists for a while in Poland and then in Transylvania, where King John Sigismund in the late 1500s declares Unitarianism the official religion of that realm, the only nation ever to declare Unitarianism as the official religion of the country. And at the same time issues the Edict of Torda, which declares that all religions will be tolerated. So King John, pretty good guy. This is going to be our religion, but if you want to believe something else, go for it. On into the 1700s and the New World, where the ideas of universalism, a rejection of the doctrine of damnation, and specifically the evangelical movement known as the Great Awakening, and Unitarianism, a rejection of the idolatry of the teacher who was Jesus. These ideas were carried forward by William Ellery Channing, Judith Sargent, and John Murray, Hosea Ballou, Theodore Parker, Louisa May Alcott, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Olympia Brown. All along, there has been not only a rejection of a particular creed, that is, a statement of belief, this Nicene Creed, but also of the one-size-fits-all, everyone must obey nature of creeds in general. It's not that we don't think you can make a statement of belief, it's just that you can't say this holds for everybody. It's that tolerance thing that goes back to Transylvania. We have been and continue to be the heretics, and anti-orthodox, anti-authoritarian, the ones who reject the status quo. There's good in there, and there's also some downside. But that's the legacy that leads us these days toward rainbow flags and Black Lives Matter signs. The orthodox line is not our line. And so, in partial answer to Anne's question about how come everybody isn't a Unitarian Universalist, it's because we're the ones pushing back. And I would argue, moving things forward. If everyone thought like us, we'd have to think of something else. For me, one thing that drew me to Unitarian Universalism was this history. The fact that these ideas go back a long ways, at least as long as there has been a Christian church. This is not a New Age religion, even as we welcome and embrace New Age ideas, among many others. Might be better to think that there have always been New Agers in every age, and we've been among them. I also get kind of a buzz from being the heretic, the nonconformist, even though nearly everything I do fits a middle-class bourgeois existence. I still want to say, don't push me into a box. Don't tell me what to think. I don't need any priests or politicians to mediate for me. I'm quite capable of finding God all on my own. We have been the ones to say it's deeds, not creeds, that make a difference. This is the difference between orthodoxy, right belief, and orthopraxy, right action. We are not alone in this. Most would say that Judaism also is non-creedal and that orthopraxy is most important. Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, in different ways, also de-emphasize creedal statements of belief. Which brings me to the last point, a discussion of the proposed Article 2 revisions, which would replace our beloved 7 principles with a set of values with similar aims, but different language that broaden what we say we are about and respond to the times we find ourselves in. Here they are. The 7 values proposed to replace the 7 principles: love, generosity, equity, interdependence, justice, pluralism, evolution. There is comfort in the principles, I know. There's security in them, solidity. They are creed-like in this sense. Some would say that the values proposed here are too loose, too shapeless. I don't know. I think that belief in a co-eternal son who is not a son, but somehow ended up as a human for a while, at least until his father, who is not his father, but in fact the same thing as him, had him brutally murdered. I think that's a little wild. But as for what we believe, what I believe, I think that these things change. And that keeping an open mind, being receptive to new ideas, I think these are right there in our tradition all along. Maybe this new statement will be the statement, maybe it won't. That's okay. We will vote on this. Sometime down the road, even if we approve it, I guarantee it'll change again. We are non-creedal. We don't say this is how it will be forever and ever, world without end. We say this is where we are right now. So another thing that Anne lifted up here is a practice sometimes in congregations where we do a little bit of dialogue. So we've got a little time now. I wonder if you have questions from all of this, and we'll try to respond a little bit. Can be about creeds, can be about the change in the Article 2 provisions, whatever is on your mind or struck you. Yes, Andrew.
Being a relative newcomer to the organization, you've presented the new kind of path here, and I'm just wondering if we could have a little bit of a review of what you're talking about this place.
Sure, you bet. So we have 7 principles, right? The 7 principles have evolved since we became Unitarian Universalists, since the merger of those 2 denominations in 1961. At that time, there was a need, it was felt there was a need to set down what it is that made us common, and or what we believed between the 2 denominations. That has evolved. The 7th principle, the interdependence, was added 1980s through a bunch of discussions, and the principles were heavily influenced by the feminist movement actually through that time. They have continued now. They're in the front of the gray hymnal, and we have, as a denomination, come to view them sort of like a creed. And there are many congregations that actually take some strong comfort in that. A while back, there was an effort to add an 8th principle, and this has been under study now for about, I want to say about 4 or 5 years, and it came up at a General Assembly. The 8th principle would have addressed anti-racism. A study commission was established and took its time to work through all of the issues on this, but what they came up with was, instead of simply adding an 8th principle, was a revision of the entire thing. So they looked at principles and how the principles were becoming creedal for us and how sometimes they didn't work quite so well. First principle, for example, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I bet that you hold that one dear. And then what do you do with Donald Trump? What do you do with people who do not exhibit any of the qualities that we would call human? So so this is why the study commission came back on the principles and came forward with a revision that focuses on values, which can be a little bit broader, which can be more liberally interpreted in that sense of the word. Does that help, Andrew? Yeah, good. Okay. What else? Yeah, Abby.
I very much enjoyed the history lesson. Way outside my time period. But universalism, can you just talk about, because I was just realizing, like, you talked a lot more about Unitarian.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about the universalist, what perspective that has, maybe?
Sure. So history on that, in the, ancient history. Origen, Origen, an elder of the Christian church from like the first to espouse universalist ideas that a loving God would condemn no one to hell. Okay, that was really, Origen was not a heretic, and that idea did not necessarily have mainstream traction until 1700s, and particularly outgrowth of the Methodist Church at that time. There was some movement in there in the dissenters, if that makes sense, and they embraced that idea of universalism, wherein a loving God would condemn no one to hell, and then that moved into the New World, and especially, as I mentioned, at the time of the Great Awakening, when there were tent revivals, Rusty's tent shows, the Universalists were a kind of a counterbalance to that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, Adele. Question is, how did I know, when did I know that I wanted to be a minister? Okay, so really quick on the call story. I had joined a Unitarian church in Racine, Wisconsin, when our boys were small as well. And we moved to Iowa and ended up in Ames, where I was a member of that congregation as I was working in journalism. And at a certain point, I was just watching the minister and what the minister was doing and thinking, maybe I could do that. There was a woman in the congregation, Mary Sawyer, dear memory. Mary was the chair of the Religious Studies Department at Iowa State University at that time. And she was, we became good friends. At that time, being the editor of the newspaper and being in a Unitarian church was not necessarily always comfortable. I would come to church on a Sunday morning, hoping to just kind of settle in and relax, and somebody had jumped me about something that had been in the paper that day. And that was often Mary. And Mary and I, on a beautiful May day, had joined others on a canoe float. I was paddling quite a lot in those days, and we had finished up the float and loaded the canoe, and she and I, in the truck driving through the back roads of Iowa on the way back, entertained this great blue sky conversation about what ifs. And Mary at one point asked if I ever thought I would leave journalism. And I said, maybe. And she said, do you ever think about being a minister? And that was, I think, the first time that anybody said so in so many words. It was several years after that before it all came to be, but yeah. Mary has since died, and so I'm a little teary because her memory is strong in me. Any others? Let's sing together. Last hymn is number 100. I've got peace like a river. Please rise in body or spirit.
I've got
following Alex's postlude. Please join us for coffee and conversation downstairs. I'll be around if you got any more questions about any of this stuff. We'll give it a shot. I'll extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the fire of commitment, the warmth of compassion, or the glow of love. These we will carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I won't study war, no. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I won't study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Oh, I won't study war no more. Gonna join hands with everyone down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna join hands with everyone down by the riverside. I won't study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. No, I won't study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. No, I won't study war no I'm gonna live me a peaceful life down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna live me a peaceful life down by the riverside. War no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Oh, down by the riverside. Do we think we have that ain't gonna study war no more part down? I wanna hear it. A tick, a 1, 2, 3, 4. I ain't gonna study war no more. No, I ain't war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Be down by the river, down by the river, down by the river, down by the riverside. Thanks. Thanks for humoring me.